Because everyone wants something that good in baseball. So if they make the teams ugly, they don't have to work as hard and keep it from the fans.
They wrote out longer.
Good job, Ryan.
They're busy covering names, right?
No, you said tapping. It's gonna be awesome. Actually, speaking of that, they're not even gonna be listening. There we go. Is that okay for you?
Sure, I just don't talk much.
That was Sam. All right, thank you. Sorry.
Thank you for setting that up.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order, and our first order of business is roll call. Will you call us in, please, Gail?
I sure will. Brian.
Present.
Tyler.
Here.
Kim. Here. John.
Here.
And Deb. Here.
And first order of business is to approve the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stands approved. Okay, we're here to discuss the long-range facility plan, and okay, good.
Well, this will probably seem a little anticlimactic since I already passed on the slideshow. I thought we'd just go through the slideshow, take maybe half an hour, just hit the highlights of it, and then just open up for conversation, discussion, and certainly this is informal tonight, so if you have questions as you're going through, please go ahead and stop me. We can just pause at that point in time. And I mentioned to Gail that I was thinking on the way up here, I really should have put all the cost information towards the end, not to hide it from you, but more or less as a flow. So what we'll do is we'll go through the first couple slides, then we'll go right to the elementary school, and then we'll come back and get the cost information. That way we're not just talking about that. The project's going to be more fresh in your mind. So anyway, all right, Gail. At all the focus meetings that we had this last 6 months, I reviewed these priorities that we set together during the phase 1 study. And so again, just reviewing that the board set the adequate education spaces were the most important. Secondly is making sure the building envelope was watertight, functioning properly. And then 3 and 4, we talked about the fact that those two could be potentially interchanged. But any improvements that we're going to look at do would weave in 21st century learning opportunities, and then the fine arts, ag, athletics, and other projects would then follow after the educational spaces. So, a little quick snapshot. These are, as I'm sure the board are aware, these numbers will fluctuate, during the year. And I think, Vic, you said that even your high school number is maybe a little higher than 480 right now. You're closer to 485, 86. Is that right? But this is the 3% growth projection that we worked through with you early this year, and it's. I'm just pleased to see that we're just so close in terms of several of the schools. It's just spot on. High school is right at 3%. Middle school is just a hair under 3%. Are you, Mike? Where are you at? Are you at 385?
385. Yep.
Okay. And then intermediate, Amy, are you still
327?
Okay, so they're going to fluctuate a little bit. And then how about you, Stacy? You still at the? So anyway. So the your actual growth district-wide was a little less than 2%, 1.75%. And the reason that we want to keep looking at these is to make sure that we're tracking what's going on. This just reinforces the fact that you're going to need classrooms at the high school first and also at the middle school. And per Mike's narrative, you saw the fact that the school was designed for 400, so you're getting close to that. So I'm very comfortable, we're very comfortable that we're going down the right path. And this is really, to me, very reassuring that if we had elementary, it was up at 350, then Ken, like you raised the question, hey, are we gonna way overshoot that? And at this point, at least this year, no, that's not the case. So, now this does exclude pre-K, and that's in a 64 range. So this is just kindergarten through 2nd grade. Okay, so we'll go right to the elementary school. So we're going to just go through each individual building facility, just kind of talk about what projects, where they were priority-wise, as well as what the projects include. So we'll go to the next slide, Gail. So just in terms of overall orientation, we're going to first talk about the highest priority, which is a secure entrance here at the front. And I will mention before we get into the next slide, we did look at trying to put an addition out here. That was one of the questions. Can we go ahead and add on a safe entry out here versus doing it right here? We did look at it, but it just became totally impractical to try and accomplish that. One is you have now an ADA. You have an ADA ramp that comes off to the west and then goes to the north. And also, whatever we do out here really can't be woven into a future building project. So we just decided, given the cost and all the other things that we knew were going to be coming up, we just focused on going ahead and doing an interior safe entry concept versus pursuing anything. So that's why I didn't develop anything further at that point. Next slide. Okay. So we talked about this before at the end of phase 1. And that is just coming in. This is where the clerestory wall jumps up, and you got daylight coming in over top of here. This is about an 8-foot, 8'3" high ceiling height in this area. There are existing columns here, 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 and here. So there's all but one that are being embedded in wall construction. So we're just nestling, secretary, waiting, pass through, and then an office for Stacy underneath that lower ceiling. And the concept is these doors would then become unlocked during the day at 8:30 or whenever you decide to lock down at the school. These doors would become locked. We still need to have 2 means of exit from the cafeteria, so we have to have panic devices on these. We can't get rid of those doors. We did look at the possibility of putting a door out here or pocketing it down there, but it just felt better here in the middle versus trying to get it in the corner. So a visitor would come in, and then these doors would then lock down at, I'll just say 8:30, and then these doors would be open, so you'd have forcing any visitors to come in through the business office and then on into the school as well too. The one I'll call drawback is that the student lunch path, or getting into the cafeteria, instead of being able to come down this hall and into here, is all be coming in from the east hall versus coming down the west hall. And there is a pair of doors up here that come out of the gym. Those just remain locked during the day, so you got a nice safe path coming in. And then there'll be some windows, some bar lights, view windows here from this office, and then also from the principal's office out. And also this will be a lot of glass right here, so someone sitting here can look and watch someone coming in, and then also having a view of the cafeteria as well too. And it will bring in some daylight also in that space as well too, since it won't have any exterior windows. Any questions on that development? Yes.
So
Deb.
John, so the secretary, the office is moved on the other side of the restroom? Or are you moving the restroom too?
No, the restrooms stay. Yep.
So did you lose size of the
We lost
cafeteria?
the hallway, right? And the 2 small rooms.
Can we go back one slide? Okay. So right now it's right here, Deb.
Right.
Okay, and this is where Stacy's at.
Yep.
And then we're just going to go over on this side. There's restroom right here. We're gonna go
On the other side.
under here. So we're not losing any restrooms. And actually you're going to gain a couple of office or
But the cafeteria is small?
Yeah, so you know where the overhang is,
Mhm.
where the low part is?
Mhm.
There's 4 lunch tables that fit right there. We only use 2 right now, but we've never, I think there's gonna be easy reconfiguration that can
Oh.
happen to adjust where those that we need are.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we do technically lose cafeteria space, but
Sorry. And that was one of the questions that the board had last time too, is the drawback to doing that here is you're actually going to lose some cafeteria space, and that's what precipitated if we do it out here as well. As we did talk to Stacy, and she just mentioned she feels comfortable that maybe a little tight, but that you can give that space up and still accomplish that objective.
maybe if the tables are closer, they won't yell at each other so much.
Don't you just put a window right there by your office?
Okay, any other questions on this one?
Oops.
Okay, so then secondary priorities would be what you have is a fresh air ventilation system that has a giant electric coil in it for heating. So what happens is fresh air is brought in from the outside, runs through that coil, brings it probably a 60, 65 degree temperature. That air goes out into the classrooms, and then the heat pumps in the individual rooms then just fine-tune that temperature the last few degrees. Apparently, they just don't run the coil. One is because the meter spins incredibly, as we talked about last time. This building does not have natural gas run to it. It's all electric. So what we're proposing to do to increase the operational efficiency is to put a new system in. Still use the same ductwork, but it's basically changing the equipment, which is up in the mezzanine, up in this area over there, and then bringing in natural gas into the building. And then that natural gas can also be used to supply heating for the gymnasium new equipment as well too. And then the heat, and again, by way of review, the heat pump system, according to Kruk Plumbing, who came in and did an analysis, your heat pump system, your well field is adequate to take care of the existing geothermal system. It's just not adequate to, one, provide heating or cooling system for the French air ventilation, partly because as a geothermal operates slowly, it's not going to come in and give you instant heat. It takes quite a while. So that's why you use usually natural gas, and then you have a freon cooling system. And then it's also, the well field is not big enough to supply heating and cooling for the gymnasium as well too. So there was some conversation a while back, well, the geothermal system is not properly designed. That's not the case. It's just it's not designed to take on any additional load from here with a fresh air system as well too. So I've asked multiple times to make sure that the mechanical engineer is comfortable, and he believes that by putting in a proper ventilation system and running it, and it requires running it year-round though too. It's not just turning it off in the summertime, but that's going to help dehumidify the air in the elementary school, take care of some of the issues. And right now, actually, you're running a lot of dehumidifiers over the summer to try and reduce the humidity. This system will be more efficient, and it will also be more widespread throughout the school. And gymnasium, taking the old equipment which is exposed in the gym, take that out, put in a new heating, ventilating, and air conditioning system. And the miscellaneous projects includes, there's several electrical panels that you can't even get parts for anymore. The concern that we have is if those would go bad, you'd shut down potentially part of or the whole school. Now, does that happen very often? I don't think that it has in my 40 years of being in the business. But the point is, let's just get it taken care of so you don't have some kind of a problem that would interrupt the educational activities going on. But it's not taking in rewiring the whole building. It's just going in and picking up some of the panels that are old and they're concerned. And the other concern is as breakers get old, they may not trip when they have overcurrent on them. They just don't operate. And so that was the other thing, to make sure we have proper overcurrent protection. It also includes bringing in the natural gas line. And the other thing is that natural gas line will be routed and sized to take care of a new elementary school, so we're not investing money in something that's going to be, oh, I wish we hadn't done that. And actually, I was surprised it was less than $10,000 to do that too, so very economical. And the last thing is a fire alarm systems upgrade. Now, we had this up here in priority number 2. I talked to the electrical engineer again about that. He put that in thinking that we're going to go in and replace all the ceilings. He said, we're going to take all the ceilings out, you're going to disturb all the fire detection system, replace it at that time. He said, if you're not going to disturb that, that's something that we possibly could put into a tertiary priority, or not actually put that as being, something we have to do right now, because it actually, it is grandfathered in, and it's not necessarily malfunctioning at this point in time. But I'm looking for some ways to try and we do some shifting of some projects to have adequate funds. So we can talk about that more when we get into the budgeting. But it's not like it's not working. It's just more or less codes are always changing, and now, for example, you have to have both a visual and audible for people who are visually impaired, and also might just be hearing impaired. So that would provide, the horns, strobes, and also When you get into larger assembly areas, it will say, you know, fire, evacuate, and actually give instructions as well too. So it takes a bigger control board, I mean a different control panel to do that, but that would bring it all up to code. But the issue is, as I mentioned in the report, these systems are notorious for becoming obsolete within 5 or 10 years. And so if we put in a new panel here right now, the question is, well, can we take it out and relocate it to the new one? Well, the point is, it may be obsolete at that point. So it's just, it's a little infuriating because it's kind of like playing obsolescence, but it's just the way it is in these systems. So.
But we're confident it works. It tests well every, I mean, I would assume you do a fire alarm and all that every month, right?
You do have protection. If you didn't have protection, he would say, yeah, don't have protection, you gotta fix it, so.
Okay.
John, was there something that was under the first priority with HVAC? Maybe
Yeah, actually, now you think that, these all moved up. This is actually primary priority.
Okay.
I apologize.
Okay. No, that's fine.
Actually, what happened, I'll blame Melissa because she's sitting on I take responsibility.
You're doing
Actually, that should be primary, and those are actually secondary, and there weren't any tertiary. You're right. We shifted them. Okay? Next slide.
Question.
Yep, yes.
So just in general, if you lump the ventilation HVAC, gymnasium HVAC, the temperature control, those things that are dealing with the mechanical, when we're done, would you expect that would be neutral on energy or savings on energy?
If you were running, you're going to definitely be saving money on the gymnasium.
In heating and cooling it?
Well, actually, that might be neutral because you don't have cooling right now, you just have heating.
That's true.
So when you run that for cooling, you're not actually dehumidifying that space at all.
And I wouldn't say we run it a lot for the heating.
So just the question, and it'll be
Operate.
some of the other ones is, for the general budget, would we expect that our utilities, because of this, would go down, be the same, that would go up?
I'm thinking with the ventilation, and because I think we have to offset, especially during the winter, with the current way that the system works, it like blows in cold air on us, which it's not just, it doesn't go through any system. So I'm assuming we'll have some cost savings realization because whatever your heat has to keep compensating for that temperature drop constantly. So I think that will be
More expensive.
Isn't electrical an expensive way to try to heat? Maybe it isn't.
You mean the...
Like what we currently are using right now.
Oh, yeah, he just turns it off though.
Yeah.
See, he doesn't run it at all, so that's why they're getting cold air getting dumped on top of them.
Oh, because it's not going.
Because it's not going.
Doesn't the
That's what-
geothermal bring it to a
Not-
certain level, right? And then the gas or electric just has to tweak that?
Yeah, so geothermal is designed in a heat pump in a room for just, basically it's to recirculate the air and just keep it at a certain temperature, and the bandwidth is like 5 or 10 degrees. It's not very much. We're bringing the ventilation air from the outside, either summer, it's hot and humid. Those heat pumps aren't designed to try and dehumidify or bring the moisture out of it. And in the wintertime, they're getting cold air dumped in there. It's still going through the heat pump, but the heat pump doesn't have the ability to bring it, to fine tune it. So that's why we want to deliver air, which is around 60, 65 degrees, to the heat pump and the ventilation system. And the heat pump will just fine tune that at the very end. So, and that's why you don't use a heat pump system or geothermal system for fresh air ventilation, because you're basically bringing in really cold air, and you got to raise the temperature pretty quickly. Kind of answer your question, if you were running these systems year-round, and let's write that down. We'll ask. We will ask Mike Salmon to just offer an opinion on that. It'll be either neutral or maybe a little higher, only because you're going to be running the air conditioning in the gym where you're not right now. That doesn't mean you have to go down to 70 degrees. Maybe you're doing it to 78 degrees to try and just keep it dehumidified. And we all know in our homes, if you go away for 2 weeks, don't run the air conditioning, you come back as hot and, or as humid and clammy. It takes a while for it to kind of get circulated. So the goal is to try and control the humidity in the overall building. So.
But if for now, if we just use the assumption of neutral,
That's
we're not going to be too
I
far.
don't think you're not going to see a, I don't think you'll see much of a decline. Okay, any other questions on the elementary? And actually, we probably should, for that one slide where I messed up on the not having the.
Got it.
All right. Okay. Intermediate school. We'll go to the next slide. So I broke this down into 5 areas, and we'll just start up here at the entry, and then we'll go to the science area down here, the old science area, get to these classrooms, and we'll finish up in the fine arts. And then there's also an overall slide that looks at the overall building in terms of some temperature control systems. So Gail, go to the next slide. So again, to accomplish a secure entry, we did look at just trying to, right now the wall comes diagonal this way, then it comes perpendicular this way, and it got very, very tight to try and insert a door in there. It was going to be getting in front of the counter. There's really no place for waiting, so we opted to develop this option where you come in and just, where the big column is right there, it's just come in here with a window wall system, and then just hit this wall here, and then the door. I believe Amy and I talked about the fact that, would there be more increased congestion, because that's really going to stop a lot of traffic flow right in this area. And Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically a lot of those students don't even go out there because your buses are primarily picking up on the west side, and this is primarily just students waiting for parents to come pick them up. Is that accurate? Yeah. So you have less of a concern about the fact of the congestion right in this area. And we had talked about, well, we could maybe cut a part of this out to try and make a little bit of flow here. And she said that there was a cast in place concrete giant bench that was there, and that's what they kind of built around it versus spending the money. Not that we couldn't do that, but one option is if it flows well, leave it as is. If it's not, come in here and just do some truncation right here, get a little more flow in through there. So we would, these doors would get locked down at 8:30. These doors would remain open. Obviously, these would be also. Now you still can get out from a standpoint of egress, and then put in a window right here so secretary can see someone walking in as well too, and then they have access. And again, the same flow through right there. Questions on that? Oh, okay. This one is, there are, let's see, 1, 2, I think there's 5 or 6 science islands around the perimeter of this room. There's an island, or there's a cabinet right here, and there's islands that go around. Oh my gosh, we got a, that doesn't exist, I think. We got a.
Nope, it does.
Oh, it does?
There's a door there, yeah.
Oh, that's right. There's a door missing. That's what it is.
Just an opening.
We have a problem with people getting out of this room all the time, so. Anyway.
Where'd they go?
And then this has a skylight in it. It's a windowless classroom, skylight right there, and then there are islands around here. So we've got budgeted is taking the islands out, putting in new floor covering, providing new casework, and then 2 sinks in both of these classrooms. And based on a conversation with Amy, is that this would be a great small group, future classroom, but we could sort of do an alternate to put casework and sinks in here as well too. There has been some leakage in the skylight. There's a lot of drywall which is kind of deteriorating, so I got budgeted to repair that and replace the skylight lens that may be leaking or having a condensation issue. And then also we're moving and replacing, putting in new ceiling tile, repainting the room, getting that freshened up. So now you'll have 2 5th grade classrooms with a small group classroom ready for 5th grade. It's pretty cut and dry.
Is that back called greenhouse, old greenhouse, or is
actually,
it offices?
It's a prep area. It's a science prep area. We're not doing anything in here at all, even just the way it is. There's some counter there. There's some storage shelves. That's kind of typical in a science, a high school science wing for storing chemicals.
That greenhouse, Kim, is on the other side of that science room closest to you.
It down here.
Gotcha, okay.
Okay, next slide. When we were here this summer, it's very obvious that this room here wasn't too bad, but there's definitely a lot of humidity issues in this area and also down in these rooms. So what's included as one of the projects is to go ahead and again do the same thing we're doing at the elementary school, additional ventilation equipment, bring in fresh air, and dehumidify and also heat that. So we'll just do some rooftop units here and here to address those two problem areas. Okay.
Is it just because of the distance, or I know we're not getting to the prices or the estimates yet, but that estimate is higher than the elementary to do what seems to be less square footage for the intermediate?
I think there's more ductwork involved, Tyler, on this one. And let's ask Mike on that, just get a clarification. He provided the budget for that. I know that at the elementary school, it's just using existing ductwork and putting in new equipment. This one, I think there's not really a ductwork system there now, so we gotta get up there and take the ceilings out and do some work on the putting in ducts. These have the old thin tube radiators that used to have fresh air coming in through the cells. So there's actually nothing there right now.
So that the HVAC project for the intermediate, if you go back one slide, please, it would impact just the rooms that are shaded, or it impacts everything?
We're also going to do some improvements to the temperature control system as
Which
well.
would be everything.
Actually, it's putting DDC system on the rest of the equipment for control. Actually, back in the elementary, we are replacing the temperature control system also as part of the overall project because of the erratic temperature control issues that they have. So we went ahead and we had a budget issue that was actually moved up as part of our October 6th work session. We definitely got that into the highest priority.
So John, that would allow Steve to go ahead and use his computer to make those
Steve can run this whole show from home,
right,
in his bed in his pajamas now.
That's great. I mean, we appreciate you doing that because that makes it a lot better system.
No, it's just good for monitoring, for controlling the systems overall, and I think it's partially done, but not the whole system is not done. But I'm just teasing. I mean, he can do a lot more than that. But the point is, yes. And then also the new temperature control system at the elementary school will be a direct digital control system as well too that will allow the same thing. Okay. So we were really actually, I was surprised at the amount of mold that was growing on the ceiling tiles in here. There's a very convoluted mechanical system here. The air is discharged out through some ducts here. The return air goes back through a wall grill, up through some ducts, and then it just moves its way around. And so we're going to get that corrected. You have there's old windows. Those get removed and replaced. This is one of the few rooms in this building that actually is partially below grade. The grade is, right here you're at grade. As you go down the steps, then the grade stays up above the floor level, and then it starts sloping down to get down to this door level. So we have budgeted excavating down below the floor level, cleaning the wall, getting it waterproofed, anticipating you got some moisture coming through the wall, which contributes to just some of the dampness as well too. We're not putting in drain tile because wherever we go ahead and get a sump and get it taken care of, but we're just trying to get that cleaned up. We're going to put in new floor covering. It just has a spray, like a cottage cheese spray on drywall or plaster. It's like a residential spray. We're going to drop down a little lay-in ceiling to kind of help with some of the acoustics, put some wall panels in there, repaint it, and then we'll put in a new mechanical system here and separate these. These rooms are kind of tied together, and that's part of the temperature control problems. So in the band, we're not doing anything in that room because there's been some case lifting been done already, except for looking at the temperature control. These practice rooms, we're not touching at this point in time. These we are getting cleaned up. They got moldy ceiling tile, and we also have to get up above there and do some duct work. So these 3 rooms will be cleaned up. This will be basically a giant facelift. Someone asked a question, well, you mentioned in phase 1 about the narrow corridor here. Don't we have to do something about that? Well, if we started removing walls or doing something structural in nature, then we'd have to go ahead and deal with it. Our argument or our position with the fire marshal is this is all maintenance. This isn't going in and doing structural modifications or rearranging the spaces. And I'm not sure we mentioned it when I met with you, but the fire marshal requires corridor clear width has to be 6 foot clear, and this is narrower than 6 feet down this area. And so right now you haven't been cited for it. Apparently they've accepted the fact that, and it would be a significant amount of work because this wall, if you look at the old drawing, this is actually a load-bearing wall as well too. So to try and take that and move it in would be a significant investment to try and get a few more feet, and you still be a choke point here, choke point there as well too. So the vocal room and the practice room, the rooms right here, it'll look basically brand new with new windows. But then we're going to split off, and this room will have separate temperature control systems so they can have their own thermostats, which right now creates issues between the individual rooms. That's all the work that we're doing in there. And then another priority is to complete. Now this is not doing the whole building. It's just getting rest of the equipment that's not on the DDC system onto a DDC system for temperature control and rest of the building. And then the other priority is to go ahead and upgrade the fire alarm system here. And one of the questions was, why is it so much more expensive here than at the elementary school? Is that it's the number of small rooms and the length of corridors. There's just more equipment and more wiring anticipated. This is basically getting a totally new system in here. Any questions? Yes.
Intermediate school. So, question back to Amy. The band and choir room. I mean, everything that John described is, basically improving HVAC, But what about size? We've grown in our band in the high school. If we invest in this, but we don't change the size, have we shorted ourselves, or how does the band and choir for the intermediate fitting in there right now?
Yeah, I don't have any concerns with size. Music, we don't have anything more than a class in there at a time. So just that 20 to 25 kids, because it's not a whole group thing, they go by class. And band, we've been pretty steady since we've been in here. Really about 85% of the 5th grade class, so just depending on what number we are, but anywhere from 70 to 90 kids, and we don't have any problem with it.
Okay. And what's the use of the old, what was, Deb wants to ask a question.
We talked about this. That's the same question. Go ahead, Tyler.
The old weight room, the kind of the
right here.
trapezoidal or whatever.
Currently it is still a weight room, and the middle school utilizes that every so often. So if we are able to make the changes at the middle school for that, we would love to repurpose that for some additional classroom space, whether it be maker space type things, or it could even be like special education area.
How about, I don't even know if it was the old wrestling, but up behind the stage.
Yeah, that's all science storage for 3, 4, 5. So we've lined the walls with shelving, and Carrie has done a great job of helping organize that, but it is all storage.
It's, okay.
You can't wrestle in there.
You couldn't wrestle
I
in
don't
there
think
before
you
it was
could.
storage.
What's the use of, let me get my orientation here. Right up there.
Up here?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Wait a minute.
Here, we're right here.
Yeah.
It's kind of become like a district
Shop,
storage
isn't it?
unit,
Doesn't Steve use it?
and then
Right
a lot of maintenance shop stuff, lawnmowers during that type of season goes here. all the deliveries kind of go in and out of here.
Is it thermal controlled or is it, what's it?
Good question. I didn't even look at that. I'm sure there's probably resident or suspended heating units there. I don't know if that's air conditioned or not. I don't know.
I'm just thinking for storage, how reliable it is for storage, or would that not be?
I think Lindsay pulls his car in here too. Doesn't
I do. It helps a lot.
he? Drive in the garage or just, no, just.
I'm kidding on that, by the way.
We need a bigger
Come January.
That's right.
I may start doing that. Yeah. No, I'm just glad of that.
You need to fit 3 cars, is what you're saying? We
Yeah.
We store our paper, because we order bulk paper, so all of our paper is stored there. If I remember right, I don't think it's humidity controlled, because we've talked about paper going through copy machines, and so I don't.
So maybe heated but not air conditioned, so in terms of humidity control.
Yeah.
Definitely not air conditioned.
I'm just looking.
The other thing, just point out too, is Steve does have, now it's kind of unorganized, but he does use this area right now. He's going to lose that.
He's
that may,
actually already moved out.
okay.
Amy kicked him
He's
out.
already moved out.
Okay.
He's in the district office now.
Yeah, he's in.
Oh, that's nice.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
But there may be an opportunity you're thinking about is, can we reclaim some of this space and build a different?
Well, I'd say using all the space, if it's usable, rather than building new space, is always a good idea, right?
Yep.
But that's just,
I
is
didn't
it already
know
being used and what's it
Right.
being used for?
I didn't know to what extent that gym and everything was still being used.
This is being used a lot by kids clubs, and then there's also other.
But during, yeah,
But
gotcha.
during the day, is it used at all?
Not on a regular basis, but probably a few times a week. Teachers will take their classes in there just to spread out to work or do some more movement type activities.
You know, if Tim was here too, he's also on tech if you have some.
But during basketball season, it's used probably 3 nights a week for our own Gilbert Middle School sports.
And every night for
And
community.
every
Yeah.
night for youth sports.
But during the day, the question is it used that much? And the question, if not, is
Well, it's used for inside recess too.
Oh, sure.
Which is great to be able to have 2 gyms.
Yeah.
Not many schools get to have that luxury.
So it's purposely not planned to accommodate such things like the need for indoor recess and teachers using it almost at an ad hoc level for additional things like that. So you purposely don't schedule it.
the other thing that's
For
not
regular
used as
things.
much either is that you got a lot of locker room space as well too.
Oh, okay.
That was, but that'd be pretty expensive to go in there and try and just got that. It is used, I think, occasionally. You use locker rooms occasionally, but it's not used a lot, correct?
Yeah, like when athletics has their mega nights that, then I think they use the locker rooms, but even for middle school sports, they don't use it as much.
Do they use those ones that Amy down at the, they don't use the
On
ones?
the East Gym, are not used at all, only for tornado
The
drills.
secret ones? Hopefully not, right?
Yeah.
The catacombs down there.
Gilbert's secret room. I'm
Okay.
sorry, it's out.
Middle school? By the way, this is a sidebar. Did you ever get any response back from CenturyLink or from the attorney regarding this diagonal line going through? I'm sorry, I should have asked that.
No, you're fine. What we have done through our legal counsel, the letter was written to CenturyLink, and then there was no response by the date that we requested. A phone call was followed up with that, and it was supposed to be actually Friday, and I have not talked to Connor today. What it sounded like was it had to kind of go through a little bit of a chain of command, so to speak, but no one in this whole process has said, yes, we have it, and here it is.
Okay.
So
Right.
I can follow up on that tomorrow, too.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to focus first of all on the classroom addition, and then we'll talk about the locker room and the multi-purpose room next. So So this is the south line of the existing building, and this is one area where we were able to actually provide a lot of breakout spaces. So what we're proposing to do is that right now there's a small little office at the end of these two corridors. That was able to be accomplished because code allows you to go up to 50 feet with a dead-end corridor in a sprinkled building. You can't go more than that without having a means of exit. So once we moved to longer than 50 feet here, we had to have doors. So we couldn't reclaim those two offices down here. So those are not included. We've lost those two small spaces. What we've done is we've taken and there's lockers that currently are on both sides in these locations. Is taking those out and relocating them down here to a wider area to start getting some small group spaces. And these are just like movable tables that would have either portable divider wall that can be moved around, some chairs, you have some screens or video monitors on the walls. It just gives a variety of spaces. We're trying to get it more spread out versus being just down in this area. So we're able to accomplish that at both locations. Now there's no changes here in terms of any removal of fixtures or equipment. It's just bringing in different types of furniture in these areas. And then these locker alcoves would remain unchanged. These are currently inside classrooms. These currently do have windows that go to the outside, so we're proposing to come in and drop in some skylights in the center of those rooms. Then you can put transoms up higher over the tops of the lockers for some additional daylight to get in this way. And then this becomes just a locker corridor, and then we have some small breakout spaces out on both ends. And then also, we thought it was nice to kind of break up that south end of the building and introduce daylight this direction. So in the future, if more classrooms go farther south, we can keep on extending down this way. Now these would then become interior classrooms again in the future. So we have 4 classrooms being added, which is the 10-year estimated needs. And one of the requests is to have a folding partition that would have some acoustic privacy, but allow that to be opened up into a double-sized classroom, instead of just having 2 more classroom fixed wall in between. And then all of this would be fully outfitted, furnished, and then a little bit of sidewalk work to do around here to continue wrapping around the building. So that should get us for 10 years based on our current projections. Enough classrooms. We talked about getting 2 more classrooms, and then we just get 4. And I think that given this type of configuration, and especially trying to have the ability to have a double wide room. If we say we only want to do 2 classrooms at this point in time, we probably would look at just doing this and then add these on both sides in the future versus trying to do one half or the other. But I think it's more cost effective to go ahead and just get them all done at one time. Mike, you want to add anything to this?
No, the only other thing that we looked at was moving them all up and getting rid of that hallway, but that presented an issue with kids getting, from one classroom, they have to go all the way up, over, and around, and so that's why we slid them down and put a hallway in there. So that was really the...
Yeah, for circulation around here, yeah.
Do you have any small group areas like are designed here today?
No, nothing like what's proposed here. No. I mean, they do work in the offices at the end of the hallways. We have kids in there a lot. We have kids out in the gap a lot, but there's nothing like this.
So it looks like there's 12?
Yes, 12.
So those would all be new in addition to the 4 classrooms. And then how much space would still be available to expand south?
We'll get that to you. It's significant. Let's go back just for a second to the one more. We're only coming out about this far. We have quite a bit of real estate out there. I can give you we just do quick blocks and give you an idea how many classrooms, but I would guess, easily 8 more classrooms going south.
Such
There's a
that
lot of
at
real
that
estate.
point, we probably expand the core capacity of the school for lunch and
Yep.
everything else.
Mhm.
And let's stay here for a second. Well, I did do a quick analysis in terms of if we want to add on a band room, a larger band room. So I didn't do a design, I did just do a quick in-house block diagram. And we can just come in here and add on a new band room. What we do is we take vocal, put that into the band room, and take vocal and subdivide it into some storage spaces that they need, and create a corridor to get out to the band as well too. But one of the challenges is that you have a pretty good sized stormwater detention pond right here. And so we'd actually have to do some recontouring on this, and actually have to be drawn back into this area to make the basin big enough in order to give us flat space to put the band room. So it really wasn't designed for any kind of an addition. There's a road that goes around, service road that goes around there as well too. It's also, I'm sure, for fire protection as well too.
No, not built for expansion to the north and east there.
No, there's actually your well fields out here. You got a lot of utilities up here as well
Is it
too.
the same, John, off of that wing right there?
Right here,
It looks
they-
like the grade falls.
They do show a 2 classroom addition out this way
Okay.
and a 2 classroom addition out this way. But unfortunately, up here by Fine Arts, there's just not. I'm not saying we can't do it. It's just going to take some additional, site work in that area. I was hoping we could dig it deeper, but the outlet from this stormwater retention pond goes to the north and keeps on going this way. And we can't go any deeper, or you'd have a wet pond, which would be marshy and kind of a nuisance.
Sounds like science.
Aquaculture.
Yeah.
I had, a passion, we become,
21st century, man.
One more?
Any other questions on this area?
Are those lockers the full length? Like, do we ever consider using the lockers and then having them be of such a height that they're actually the tables on top?
No, I didn't. We're trying to keep your locker count the same here as we're displaced and pick up more lockers. So,
And they
and we did talk about this a little bit. What's the future of lockers? Because these kids are basically bringing everything in their locker collection with them anymore, and they got huge bags that are with them, and you have to get a huge locker to try and include that. And so I think they're talking about, would teachers allow them to bring their bags or their backpacks, into the classrooms? And we talked about that in terms of the future of the lockers.
Yeah, kids did bring their backpacks in last year, and because of the size of the backpacks and the number and the size of the rooms aren't very big over there, the way they're configured, and so it presented more of an issue than it did anything else, having those backpacks, because kids would tend to literally carry everything in there, and they were humongous. I weighed one kid that was 26 pounds, and he was slugging it on his back every day.
I just keep thinking that there's going to be fewer books eventually someday.
Textbooks.
Well, we have our math textbooks are online, and for the most part, the kids hate it.
I don't see us going away. I don't see it.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that it seems like with the Chromebooks that, wow, everything should be online, but cost effectiveness, that isn't as cost effective, and kids don't always access it as easily.
The only thing it's nice for our math textbooks is if they forget it, they can get on at home and still get it. But if you gave them the preference, which would you rather have, they'll choose the hard copy every time.
That's cool.
So.
Would there be a possibility, if we had online books, that you could just leave them on the shelf in the rooms, so they don't have to haul around all the books?
Most of our teachers do that, do just that.
We just have a classroom set that kids can check out if they need. And then we have a few extras that if a student needed one at home, they would have to carry it back and forth.
Yeah.
If, to accommodate special needs, we have a few extras, but typically we have just a classroom set.
Okay, because it just seems
Yeah.
Silly to be
Yeah.
lugging those books around.
I heard an interesting presentation at DMAC a few years ago, and it was actually a gentleman that was coming in that actually ran the bookstore for DMAC. He actually ran bookstores all over the Midwest for community colleges. And someone asked a question about the future of online books, and he said that their sales was less than 10% were ebooks, because they were basically just this PDF version of the print version. He said, but the game changer is books are going to start coming out. They'll have hot links to them. And so you'll have, instead of a picture, you'll have a link to a video that will actually be more instructive. And he said he thinks that when that comes out, but said that's basically rewriting and reformatting, materials. At that point, he said then people will probably be more interested in doing it because it becomes more interactive versus just basically reading something which is electronic.
The other thing about lockers, I would say, is when the kids last year did carry their backpacks, their lockers were still full. A lot of it was, their instruments, if they weren't that big, because our instrument storage in the band room is such that they just lay out on the floor. So if they carried something like a clarinet or a flute or even a trumpet, that would be in their locker. Their bags for after-school athletics would be in the lockers or on top of the lockers. So even if they weren't carrying, when they weren't putting their backpack in there with their school stuff, they were still full.
And you had double height lockers too, right?
I think I was thinking of them, and you couldn't do that because that hallway is probably too narrow, but I think I was thinking of it in the middle. And so there would be locker, maybe it would be a little
I
wider.
see, yeah.
But I think space-wise, I get it. I just wondered because it's just another space to be able to work on. You know what I mean? But,
So you're saying if we had like something down the center?
yeah, but it would probably make it so congested. I'm sure you considered it. I just was thinking of it as
Part of the
that extra
reason
space.
is that you'd have to have 6 foot. The way the code reads is that when the locker door is 90 degrees open on both sides, you have to have 6 foot clear between the opening edges. So this becomes north of 10 feet, usually a 10'8" to make sure that we don't have like 1 inch, because they do measure it when they come in here. So that would mean we actually have to go up in there 10 to 12 feet, more farther south, which would add, significant square footage to that.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yep. Okay. So here's what currently is the configuration. You have just 8th grade, is that right? 8th grade, 7th grade?
Yes.
8th and 7th.
Yes.
So you have grade separation here. There is a door into each of the locker rooms. And it's mirrored on the boys and girls side. And then you have the wrestling room, multi-purpose room in the center with, I think there's some storage and
That's the weight room, yeah.
So what we're proposing to do is to remove a section of the lockers and walls in these 2 locations, cut the wrestling room in half, and then we gain 106, we call them boxes, whether they're single height, double height, triple height. There's 106 additional positions to put a locker unit. And then also we've got now just 1 door coming into each locker room, and then you have a coach or a PE instructor can go and walk back and forth and have sight line down all of the aisles for a security standpoint. And I think you indicated in your narrative that this is where a lot of your bullying or harassment occurs in these areas, because it's hard to kind of oversee and supervise. And then also anticipating the potentially for transgender is to create 5 before about toilet stall wide, just not to go in there and change with and these toilet partitions, not actually metal stud and drywall, are just going to be thinner partitions, and then one that's ADA compliant as well too. So it'll be 5 on the girls' side, 5 on the guys' side, or even if someone just doesn't want to dress or change in the middle of the locker room, we can go ahead and do that. There's no additional plumbing fixtures. It's just more or less just a privacy changing area. So then we go ahead and replace that space This room, the dotted line right here, just illustrates the size just from comparative standpoint, and then we're actually, if you were to expand and adding about 1/3 to 2/5 of the space for the wrestling room, we're proposing either large double doors or an overhead coiling door to get the mats into the gymnasium, and then there'd be windows here on the south side, and then students can stand there and wait for the parents to come and pick them up. And you have a pair of doors, and also to be walk-off mats here, so you can try and, when students are coming in, other people are coming in to the northwest corner of the gym, have some place for that sand and that moisture to get off of the shoes. Also, part and parcel of this is there is a water main that goes right along.
Yeah, exactly.
What's that?
I said, of course there is.
Yeah. And so we don't like putting water mains underneath buildings, so we're going to jog around there. And then there's also some additional parking lot redoing that we have to do because we're going to lose some circulation, some parking spaces over here. So that's all part and parcel of the overall addition cost. So yeah, if you mind go back to the site plan for a second.
Oh, this is the high school.
Sorry. There you go. So we're coming out here, which affects some of the parking in this area and the circulation and drop-off or pickup area. So we're just expanding some additional parking out in this area to replace that which we are displacing. That's all part of the cost. Okay, go back to the other.
Is that just like how tall is that multi-purpose? Is it match with the gym? Or
Yes,
is it
no, it won't match
match
the
with-
gym. It'll match this height.
Got it.
Okay, any questions on this part of the project?
Is there, so that estimate is 1.46 million. Any just ballpark of what the reconfiguration of the locker room is versus building a new component?
I did look at that. I think it's about 300 to 400,000 out of that project cost.
A third of it might be in the...
I think that's about right, Tyler. If you want, I might write that down on the list, and I can email to you tomorrow. I intentionally budgeted those separately, so you can go ahead and pull those out. I do have that number. I can quickly pull it up for you. Any other questions on that, or we'll go to the high school next? Okay, let's just stay here a second. Initially, we talked about doing an extension of the classrooms. I just want to kind of close the loop on that when we were doing phase 1. After meeting the focus groups, talking with administration, and also looking at trying to be cost effective in terms of any kind of work, it ended up being that the best location to extend classrooms was to do off the north wing, and also because we're going to be doing an art room, and because art room and the art department interacts with VOTEC as well too, it makes a lot of sense to go ahead and just concentrate all that work up here on the north side versus going out here on the south side. And we did look at, we haven't given you a design or a layout, but we did start looking at how can we continue out this way to make sure we're not shooting ourselves in the foot, and we're very comfortable we can go ahead and continue adding on in the future. And so we're not basically building something and saying, oh, I wish we had thought about that ahead of time. Okay, Gail, next slide. So 2 slides here, excuse me. First is just looking at doing a 3 classroom addition. So art room would be on the lower level, and then we talked about, and staff asked for, that there be another restroom down here. Now we had designed or laid out doing a larger bathroom facility, but that got to be quite expensive. So we went ahead and just decided we put in just a single stall to try and keep the cost down overall. And then on the second floor, you got 2 classrooms. This classroom becomes an interior classroom. So is this one. This one we put a skylight in, but this will have no natural light. And then this would also be interior. So you have skylight proposed for that, and then you'd have the classroom out here to the north side. So the costs come in terms of having to move the stairs or demolish the old stairs and move those further to the north. And then going ahead and adding on a additional shop, Votech area, and then this little pocket becomes a tool crib. They lack storage, so it gives them the opportunity to have additional storage off of both of the new as well as the existing area. And then part of this is going to be, you got some equipment out, you have some welding hoods and some exhaust systems here that have to get relocated over to this side. We'll go to the next slide. This was the option to go to between 6 or 8 classrooms. So on this one, the art classroom would be on the west side. So you have daylight also on the west as well as from the north. And one of the requests from the art teacher was it would be very nice to be able to have this in the future, have a classroom that they could be linked to for graphic arts as well as for the messier, wet art class events or curriculum. Then you'd have the opportunity to do a large group room on the ground floor, or you could do 2 smaller classrooms, 1 larger classroom. So that red box is just illustrating there are some options. Or we could start out with a large group room with the opportunity to go ahead and subdivide it in the future into 2 classrooms, or to go this direction as well too. So we can set up the wiring, the light control system, cooling system, heat system that would allow you to accomplish that. And the Votech remains the same. And on the second floor would be the same. We have 4 classrooms upstairs, some shared small group space. And then this one would have a small group off of 1 classroom. We were trying to get this restroom snuck in there and keep these classroom sizes all the same. All these classroom sizes here are the same classroom sizes you have currently. So we're not going any smaller. And then extending obviously the stairs up there as well too. So that gives us the 2 options, and we also gave you the budgets for both those options as well too.
When you did the budgeting, so you've got the 3 classroom at 2.15, and then in additional options, you show 7 classrooms versus 3 classrooms, 3.44. Is that 3.44 on top of?
No.
That would be 3.4 instead of?
Standalone, right.
Okay.
Yep. And
instead of the 2.15.
Right. And the reason is that we're doing a single loaded corridor, so we're doing all this work, all that stairwell work. We're also extending additional wells out, well field to take out the geothermal system. You have a big header that's designed to add more wells to it in the future. So all that cost is getting built in. Also the greenhouse, we budgeted a new greenhouse because the greenhouse right now sits in this area right here. That's going to get displaced, and per the the narrative, it's already moved once. It's not in very good condition, so try and move it again. So go ahead and just get a new one. So that's all embedded in that 3 classroom option, and that's why it looks like, my gosh, why is it so much less money per classroom to go to the second one? Or just primarily just building, adding on this space, and all the corridors are already taken care of.
In Vic's, in the middle school, go forward, create 12 small group areas. This doesn't look like it's creating any of those. Are those needed, or should we be trying to figure out how to create small group space in the high school too?
Well, on the second level, there are 2 small group spaces on the second level.
And there's 2 on this side, and then there's 1 here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gained a couple there, 3 actually. I'm not as concerned. I'm more concerned with classroom space as we project out toward our 10-year projection. We're looking at needing more of that type of space versus the small group space. We can always find little areas for kids to work, little teachers to take groups of kids to areas. I'm not as concerned with small group spaces as I am accommodating our 10-year projection. And we could gain 2 additional if we choose to go the route on the first level, at least talking about it there versus the split classroom. But I like the idea of being able to have a wall put in and having an additional classroom in that area if I were to need that.
Well, this is something that could easily be done over the summer as well too. I mean, just come in and put a, you can go a metal stud and drywall if you wanted to. So it could be taken out in the future. If the next phase you come in, you're start putting in more classrooms, you want to reclaim that large group space, you can go ahead and take that out, give you some flexibility. And the reason we're going to concrete block is it's durable. It's basically, it's got, 40, 50, 60 year life. Drywall gets dinged up. Although you can get drywall, which is basically cement board with a finish on it that's much more durable. That's what pros you would use. In particular, in the corridor, because you'd be used both directions there. Another reason that we didn't have across the hall the same kind of arrangement is that we're trying to get this restroom stuck in here, and also trying to get the plumbing stack aligned between these 2 restrooms. If we move this up here, it could be shared, the small group could be shared between the 2 classrooms, and you certainly couldn't have the offset plumbing if we needed to, but the art classroom needed just a larger space. And also, you mentioned in my narrative, there is millwork that would be included and budgeted in there. We just don't show it right now. We're going to go through and do the whole design of all the layout. Okay. All right, so fine arts. This band room got fairly large, but it ends up being that is sized per standards to get 125 students in there. The red dotted line illustrates the current size of the current band room right now. And then right now you have instrument storage, and actually we used some standards from some manufacturers in terms of adequate space for instrument storage. So you have access to off the corridor, access from the band room on both ends. And then this current room, this is the theater storage. This right now is band storage right here, and there's a wall, and then there's like a small ensemble room, so that wall would be removed. And this is where you have the instrument, I'll call them cages for sake of a better word, in this area. And so this would become where we could slide in an extra changing room. And this is less than 50 feet, so we don't have a dead-end corridor issue. And then the band room gets subdivided, so you have uniform storage, accessible from both sides. And then the band instructor's office would be located, you can have a door actually on both sides if you wanted to. And then there's a small ensemble room right there. And there's really not any change to that room whatsoever. Now you do have a standby generator right there that serves your safe room, so that's not being touched at all. And they did plan for extension both going out to the north and also going out to the east, so it's presumed that all the wiring and all that is all been laid out so that it accommodates that expansion. And these lines are very close to what you currently have in terms of your paving, so we're minimizing the amount of paving and then just trying to get this tied into your paving as well too. And actually this we would have that we connected to the sidewalk.
So it doesn't compromise any of the current parking?
No, not at all. Yep. Gail, can you go back just to the site plan again, just kind of show. So we're just sliding it right up in this area right here, so we're not touching anything whatsoever. And then this is also designed to come out this way as well too.
Is most of the cost for this just pure square footage, like there's nothing fancy going on in there?
Yeah, we're not doing anything fancy, Brian.
Sort of like,
let's go back to the fine arts. The other thing we talked about, we looked at a couple options in terms of, theatrical and stuff, is that you have the word Gilbert, cast in the precast.
Oh, no.
And we had talked about coming out here and doing some theater storage or a small addition right here. We just couldn't reconcile ourselves to doing that and not trying to make it look like it's really cobbled up as well too. So there would be a small, they did ask for an additional man door, walk door right there, so we budgeted to cut in one right there, and also that door is not very weather tight, so just replacing that door is part of the project.
So when we went through that tour, the vocal room did not need to be any bigger in the high school, but it does in the middle school because the program's getting so much bigger in the middle school, right? Or we at capacity or something?
Well, when it was built.
Are we worried that some of that's going to come up to the high school? I mean, it's going to get too big or too small? Or
When we built, our vocal music classes were in the 20s,
Yeah.
and now they're up in the 70s. So you're right, there's possibly more coming up.
I can't remember which was which. Yours was the one in the middle school is really tight, right?
Yes. Yes.
It's like classroom size, slightly bigger right there.
Yeah.
So I've got 75 kids and I've got room for 75 chairs.
Right.
I can stand.
Okay. So actually, sorry. I was waiting for you to change the slide, sorry. This would be the career tech. So this would be the addition in the 3 classroom. We didn't show both options. Obviously, if we did the deep classroom on the other side as well too, it would just still fit in. It's just attaching it. And we did talk at length about the merits of either having a standalone building or attaching it, but given how and the vision of how this is going to be used during the day, it seemed like a lot more sense to go ahead and actually have it attached to the building. So you would just extend this vestibule and use it as a buffer, so in case you have any kind of odors, because you're going to have animals or livestock in there. Not full-time, but from time to time as well. And then, see, there'd be 2 stories, be tall enough space, it's like a story and a half. This would be a 1-story connection, so you could have daylight coming into this classroom right here.
Remind me, so there's animals in that room? What other things are going on in there? Sorry, I can't recall what we were doing in there. But you got me with animals.
Yeah, I thought John did a nice job of kind of just explaining Ryan what all it was going into that.
I think I was getting confused with the addition right, well, I guess on this one south of that, and the vocational tech room in that one.
Animal tech labs, food science, renewable energy, construction, mechanics, greenhouse.
Okay.
It's in the narrative.
You want to comment on that, Dick, as well, or?
Yeah, what the plan was that it would be an area where we could combine a lot of different curricular areas toward one 21st century goal. So for example, if the animals were raised, and would be housed there, and at some point, we would get into how the animals are raised, and then how we feed the animals through the egg science, and the science behind, what we do to raise those animals and feed them, and then at some point, they would become food, and then we're talking how we combined our family consumer science with actually using the food in our marketing classes to how we could actually market and package and sell the items, or even use them in our own school cafeteria and things. So combining a lot of different curricular areas toward one goal.
Yeah. So these would have, it would be animals for a while, then they'd get foodized. And then, so it'd kind of transition over the seasons or teaching times, I guess.
Correct.
Okay.
It would be flexible space. I mean, the whole space would not all just be animals running around in there. They'd be pen and things. There would be classroom space in there as well, and where you could actually go in and do some.
He talked about ferrying out gilts and just the education of all of that.
And the plan would be to partner with many many different groups to help actually make that happen. But there are groups that are interested in coming in and doing a lot of partnerships with our school.
There was a really robust participation level on the part when we had our focus group. And I think there's a lot of contributions being proposed in terms of equipment and stalls. So what I budgeted is basically walls and a little bit of plumbing that made very clear that all the hog slats and the cages and all that stuff would be coming because they wanted to see that happen, and it would be a contribution in kind or a donation outright.
And it could be a year where you're not doing anything with animals, so maybe you were looking at doing some renewable energy things, or getting into where the science and some of those things come together with ag, and a variety of different programs could be involved with using that space.
It's pretty innovative, honestly. I think it's pretty exciting to see how you. And I was very impressed with John in general from the standpoint of he was telling me about the fact of how the kids students just go out and just don't plant crops. They got to calculate yields. They got to go out and monitor the fields during the summertime, and then they go ahead and harvest it, and they store it. They figure all that out. So they're really doing this tremendous project-based, learning. So
there's some great. I think it's the definition of project-based learning.
Sure.
You start looking at all those different areas, and with the possibilities of partnerships with Iowa State, and we are the DMAC Ag site, although it doesn't get utilized as much as it should. But we could host DMAC Ag classes on our campus with an addition like that. So there's some room to really expand and grow.
Yeah, to me, there would be an opportunity with the partnership, not just for the equipment, but potentially with the building. So that would there be any savings to doing it all at one time versus, if we said, well, that's not something we can do right now, we're going to do it later.
Maybe get 5. Just some mobilization charges that you're going to save. Because it's pretty raw space, we're not doing a whole lot. I mean, you're just going to.
You wouldn't build the north wall of the boat tech any different,
probably
knowing that you're okay.
You got animals on the other side.
And it wouldn't be an exterior wall.
Right, that's what I'm just wondering.
Yeah, you might.
Seems like
you would save a little bit on the insulation. You would probably have insulation between them.
Are there any code change? I mean are there hidden expenses there or something like that go beyond the building? But now you're talking about by having things like animals or something there that now you've got to reconfigure other aspects of the building.
Well,
Because they go to the bathroom. They go. Where does all this go? You know what I mean? There's
they're going to bring
cost
animals
there.
in and don't go to the bathroom. It's just
That's the 20%.
got to do a lot of genetic engineering.
Yeah, so I think we're kind of blowing the animal part a little bit out of perspective. I mean, when he talks about the group, it's bringing in a couple of bred goats and they farrow and they're there for 3 weeks while they have their pigs.
Gotcha.
And then
Short
they're
period of
gone,
time.
I'm
right?
picturing
So it's-
stalls.
No.
It's
Things
not
that
an
are-
ongoing production facility. It's a demonstration.
Or you might bring them in, study them for a period of time, and then they're out.
Right,
Gotcha.
right.
You might have one sheep, or you might have some poultry come in for a short period of time. And
Okay.
so,
I was picturing something.
Good question. Yes, it's not going to be full-time, year-round animals.
There probably will be some implications regarding code and separations of occupancies, but it won't. It's not a big cost implication there.
Doors are going to keep the state.
Probably the bigger issue is making sure we have a negative pressure of air in there from exhaust. So we don't have. One of the concerns we did have was you don't want any.
Sweet art students.
What's that?
Getting blasted by carcass, yeah.
Go ahead, just-
Three people are watching.
All right.
I didn't know that's what that was for.
Any questions? Okay. We're on the athletics, is that right? That's next. Yep. So we were asked just to kind of say, well, how would you use this space if you decided to do tennis courts? And actually, this building, the indoor facility, this was laid out when it was a smaller facility, but we can make this indoor facility longer and slide these tennis courts down further, but there's adequate space here to get an indoor practice facility here. And future tennis courts, we haven't even budgeted them, it's just one of letting allocating land for that, having 6 tennis courts. So the highest priority was to actually do the full stadium, both the softball and baseball stadiums, and this would be where you put the practice fields. Would be in the same exact location, just without paving and fencing and lighting and press box, bleachers. So that remains the highest priority. And then this, you're already reconstructing or redoing the practice field up there to the north. So we didn't even budget anything for it or even call it out at all. So at the high school, that's primarily what we have budgeted, is the 2 options. To the next slide. And then, again, the high priority is that, and I think we talked about this previously, but the fields are not irrigated. There's a lot of fissures, there's a lot of unevenness to it, so we budgeted is to come in here and just to do some field dressing, get it reseeded, put in an irrigation system, make a deeper or bigger warning track out here, going to an 8-foot fence at the outfield fences, bringing in a warning track on the softball side. We are not coming in here and tearing out the entire infield though and coming in with new Shakopee, clay. It's just basically doing some doing ag lime on the fields. I think the long-term vision is that's very expensive to bring in, import that material. So just to basically get this reconditioned and smooth. And let's see, the irrigation, fencing, warning track, those are the big things to make those a more safe environment. Apparently this past summer with the drought, they had some pretty good size, cracks develop, in the just in the ground because this is, plain dry. So that investment would then, you wouldn't necessarily need an 8-foot fence if you're going to be doing the lower grade baseball, but you still have be a safe environment, and the irrigation is really going to be beneficial. So we try to break it into the project that if we just do practice fields down at the high school, how can we improve these short term until there's sufficient funds to go ahead and complete the stadium at the high school, and these become a middle school and also community use fields. And then to talk about in the narrative about just providing some practice soccer fields. These are full-size soccer fields that would be irrigated, but they would not be lit. There's nothing beyond just doing some grading in that area, seeding, irrigation, but then they could also use it for the high school practice when they can't use the field turf, as well as the community can use it as well. And there is doing some regrading around the perimeter just for the stormwater management system, and also we have drainage coming across here just to get that water directed around the fields. But there's nothing being done over here whatsoever. It's just primarily developing these 2 practice fields and then putting in irrigation. The next slide. We budgeted repairing the track, not replacing the track. So in particular in these areas right here and here is a pretty good size deterioration and cracks that go not just through the surfacing, but actually through the asphalt base. So we cut out sections where the cracks were pretty significant, put in concrete. Where there's minor cracks, we can actually take the urethane track down to the asphalt surface, fill the cracks, just do some repair with some geotech fabric, and then repair the urethane, and then just overspray the entire track with a new structural spray, which would give you probably another 7-8 years of life before you got to come back in. And actually, if you're going to do a full tear out, it's significantly more money, but also you put in stormwater drainage, because right now there's not much drainage around there. And the enemy of these all-weather tracks is water. It gets underneath the surface and actually causes degradation. So we're not proposing to do that. We just did that for a different school, where we did a full tear out, put in stormwater drainage systems, and then put in new base and put in the polyurethane. That was done last year, and that was almost $600,000 to do all that work. So it's fairly expensive, you know, to do a full tear out and do a full build out and stormwater system as well too. So that's why the price for what we're talking about on this one is significantly less money.
Who uses this now outside of, like, or who practices there, I suppose?
The high school practices here, and also the middle school as well too. So, and actually there are some areas that, I mean, you could definitely get your foot caught. It's pretty significant in terms of the cracking. That is, it's not pervasive around the whole area, but there definitely are areas as you walk around where you see where there's actually cracks in it.
So that's kind of what confused me by the priority, because if this is a safety issue and it's enough to be called out, well, why would this be a secondary?
That's a good question.
I know probably nobody's here that
I
can
think
answer
Tim would have placed it as one of his highest priorities.
that. Oh, he would, he did.
I think in our conversation.
Okay.
So we'll just shift that
Because
up.
it's not like it's that it shouldn't be, I mean, it sounds like kind of that's your own list, use it to some extent.
Well,
For maybe other than walking or something like that, you know?
and I think especially looking at it from the repair angle, he would even put it higher knowing that it wasn't going to be
Sure.
such a huge chunk of the budget for that. So I think he would.
Okay.
And your best estimate, I know that's just all it is, but it's a 7 to 8 year life. And then you probably can't do this again, I'm assuming, or?
No, you can actually come in and tear off the polyurethane, the mat, put a new mat on top and do a structural spray, and that's going to run about we just did that this summer at Ballard, and it was about $140,000 to do that. We found that the base, the asphalt base, didn't require any repairs. It was in really good shape. So it all depends on how that asphalt base continues to perform. And if we can get in there and do the repairs and just do minor patching, you could do that again. And then you get another 10, 12 years, you know, out of it. So you can continue investing in it.
Right.
The whole thing is it's unknown because of the fact there's no drain tile, there's no subsurface drainage around here. That's the problem. This is left over from the phase 1 study, but this just shows this is where your floodplain goes, so you can actually have water, and just surface water even coming that far. I don't know if it's gotten that far historically, but anyway.
So when we do a repair and a structural spray, that'll give us around 7. Can we come back and do a structural spray, which would be less expensive, and get another 5 to 7?
I don't think so. You only got one on there right now, so I don't recommend going.
You can't go another one?
I don't think so. But
Okay.
I can. Let's just double check that. I can call and find out on that.
Yeah, I think since we're in need of 2 tracks, that we just need to know long-term, well, what does that look like? I mean, if at some point it's got to be replaced, but what are the options?
So the option would be is repair it now and spend them. Again, I think it's $100,000.
This is 100, yeah.
And then if the base is in good condition, then invest $150,000, $160,000 to go down to the asphalt and put a new layer of rubber and then a structural spray, and that should get you easily another 10 years, and then you can coat over that again for another 5 to 8 years. So what was amazing is if we went back and looked, and my gosh, Ballard's track, that coating system and structural spray lasts almost 30 years. So they got more than a money's worth, out of that. So they're always telling us 7, 8 years, 7, 8 years, but that one really gave them significant. And again, you're surprised at how good the condition was of the base once they went down there. So I just saw everyone aware too is that when you put in you go down to the old asphalt, if there's undulations and pockets and bird baths, you're not putting in a new asphalt, which is going to be true. So that structural spray is going to follow that. So if there's any kind of, but anyway, but it's still, I think it'd be a really good practice track.
Our question would be the base, whether that's,
We don't know.
that's questionable, I think.
And that probably would warrant just, I mean, probably having a contingency in case you took off the structural strength and, oh my gosh, this thing is really in bad condition. But then you got a big, huge change order. And the last one is, we're not really doing any work here, just to kind of illustrate what we're talking about, is that right now you have, you know, your youngest soccer fields up in this area. You could slide them down here, because what we're actually doing is taking those 2 large soccer practice fields here, going to the middle school, which would free you up to go ahead and put smaller practice fields around here. And then this would allow the community baseball group to go ahead and put, you know, fencing around in the outfield, and still have adequate room for soccer. And then you can still build the elementary school.
We're not doing any of this, you're just saying this would be a community option?
Right.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, we have nothing budgeted at all for
Yep.
anything here, just to kind of illustrate how you would use the site.
What we would be doing is creating a second 90-foot field, and that field number 2, the one to the north there, would no longer be a 90-foot, so now it's smaller.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yep.
And so now you can do soccer around there without having baseballs flying in.
That's right.
So the school wouldn't have to do anything here, but the school would, for this to happen, the school would have to have a second 90-foot field.
And I don't want to speak specifically for Tim, but we did talk about, I think there was a little bit of a difference between what we thought. I think he had soccer fields up maybe at least in secondary because of that 90-foot fence, taking that out. So I think it's listed right now as tertiary, but I think we left that one conversation having that be a little higher. You didn't have it as high as priority,
but
middle school soccer fields.
Is that primarily, I mean, that's got to be grading. It shows.
Right. It's just going there, grading it, irrigation, and doing the seeding and
$350,000.
Having the middle school fields is more important now. Or
no, it's listed right now as a tertiary, and I think he felt like that was a secondary with that.
So by the time let's go fast forward and we're building a new elementary school. Well, that space will be used for the school that currently is small soccer fields, right? So those could be moved down here, but then the large soccer fields need to go somewhere else.
Middle school.
And I mean, it all, as long as we build the 90-foot field and it's Stacy's saying have space for the larger, which is more age appropriate out there rather than the elementary, then all that works. And when we're ready to build the elementary school, it's not a crisis for where we're going to put the fields.
And that helps with parking too. Those U6 fields, those tiny fields, man, parking is horrible up around that curve.
Parking all the way down.
Yeah, it's a disaster.
So that way, they can be right beside the upstill parking.
Nice.
So
who
it
would
does
utilize the new soccer fields?
The new big ones.
U14?
Or the new.
The larger ones, I think these only go up to U10. Could be wrong, it might be U12, but so it'd be U12, U14, U6. I mean, there's U18 club high school.
And our own school sports too, right?
They use them.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, that they actually use it for high school when they can't use the turf because of track or other things going on. They can go ahead and practice on right now they practice on the up
intermediate here, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So John,
which is nice.
You may want to just cover this when you're going back over the numbers, but can you clarify specifically for the baseball? So under highest priority, you've got baseball, softball, stadium at 2.39.
Right.
And repair of 390,000. Okay?
Yep.
So a total of 2.78. Then if I go to additional options, I'm trying to understand the 970,000, is that just to bring the current fields up to varsity competition? Or
we were asked to say, okay, so what if we were going to spend another 8 or 10 years at the field
Existing,
upgrades.
the existing field.
Yes.
Then
What would it
this-
cost to replace the lighting,
Yeah.
field lighting?
Yeah.
So that would be 520. Replacing the bleachers and providing some additional, oh, I'm sorry, I'll go back to the middle school.
Yeah, that one.
So here, so you do is you replace the lighting on both fields. You would replace the bleachers and then provide additional paving because it's difficult for grandparents to get up to the. And then the question was, would Case would replace the concession stand? It was just information. I think that the goal was to try and compare what it would cost to do upgrades here versus building new stadiums.
So if there were just practice fields put in and those were to then be varsity competition for another 10 years, you're saying as much as 970,000?
If you want to go ahead and just say, yeah, I want to have the lighting upgraded and to do a comparative side by side.
And then
But
right
you don't
below
decide.
that,
Go ahead.
It's more than 970, isn't it? Plus the repairs to the field.
Right.
well, that's what I'm trying to understand, all
So I
of
think it's
the,
like 1.3.
and then create practice baseball field, create practice softball field, another 1.3?
Yep.
So 2.6.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically, I guess, so the question would be, if you do the full state, if you do new, how much do you have to do there to make it competitive or useful for middle school ball?
You need to make the field repairs at $300,000.
The 350,
Right.
okay,
Yeah.
390.
Yeah, but then, and actually, the question is, do they want to go to the 8-foot tall fence if you're going to just do middle school baseball or not?
Okay.
And then do you want to do the warning tracks? That repair and the safety issue was given as if it was going to be used as a varsity, JV and varsity.
And we talked about that.
So potential, so the 2.78 would be if you build new and you do the minimal repairs. And if you did practice fields and did the repairs needed for varsity competition on the existing, you still come up to 2.3. Is that right?
It'd be the 1.35, right? The 750 plus 600.
Plus the 970 above?
Well, no, I mean, I think the reason it's broken out that way is, can you get by with not replacing the field lighting?
You're talking about it being the varsity competition,
Yeah.
not the practice field.
Right. Tim asked me to give the budget to, what if you replaced the baseball field, softball field lighting?
Mm-hmm.
So what you're doing is we're actually taking all these elements that you would have put at the state. That's why they're so close. I mean, so
Eventually you're going to invest, it's whether you've got a new
Right.
field or you're just investing in the old one.
The bottom line is that can we live with the concession stand for another 10 years or 8 years? I think the bleachers probably should be upgraded to make them ADA compliant as well as in the paving. But then I'm just going on what Tim said in terms of the condition of the lighting, that it would be beneficial to have that upgraded. But yeah, so that's why when you start doing the numbers, they're almost the same because you're providing the same amenities. The difference is that you already have fencing here and you have some of the other amenities here, but we're not going to put a new concession stand at the at the high school because you already got that
That's built
facility.
Yeah.
So those dollars that go for the concession stand will go for fencing, will go for press boxes, and go for dugouts and some of the other amenities. So really, but you're paying for the same level of
Okay.
of service. So
What's your life expectancy on like field lights? In other words, right now, I'm not a light expert by any means, but those are, I would guess those are must-go lights.
so if you put in new ones,
No, the ones that you currently have, what is the life expectancy when you have to turn those over
For baseball?
for baseball or
Those are
softball?
not- Those are ancient.
I don't know what I honestly didn't evaluate them at all. Then,
Okay.
So I mean, Musco will give you a 25-year warranty now that guarantees that you will get the same proper illumination for 25 years. They'll come out and change your lamps. I mean, it's pretty much you pay the money and
They'll do it.
you're done for 25 years. So, and it might go longer than that. But I don't know what you'll have to help me understand what the condition is.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
And any estimate of how much the cost, whether it's a practice field or it's the stadium, is just moving the mountain that's there now?
Yes, I don't have that off the top of my head.
That's a nice cross-country course.
I do have the earthwork budgeted, but I don't have it with me.
Because we're going to have to pay to get rid of that, is that right?
Yeah.
Or it's
And
not going
unfortunately, I
somewhere
did
else?
check with
Yeah.
Harold Pike and Construct, and it's not, unfortunately, it's not high quality topsoil that came right off of a farm field. It's actually, it is black dirt, but it's more clayey type dirt. And so it's not going to be, it's suitable for fill underneath the building or under landscaping, but it's not suitable for using to spread to try and grow grass on.
So, I mean, not to put you on the spot, but I don't know why it was just piled there. If there isn't any use, was there any plan for it to be used? My assumption was it was black.
Future product. Future product.
Yeah, but to do what?
In case,
Provide.
I think especially as they thought about that possible to building to the south, if we were gonna put building there, they thought that, because it goes lower like this. So there would be a significant amount of fill dirt that would have to go there.
If you're buying them imported, you got it already.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to use any of that for fill dirt on if baseball and softball will go out in that area?
It's got to be removed.
You gotta remove it. We've got any low spots. We could put it
Right.
You could just move it out to the north, that section we're not looking at, north of the middle school, where there's all these
It's a,
divots and holes.
yeah, the dirt gets really expensive to, move. And it's just, so you want to just move it once. I mean, that makes perfect sense, though, to put a borrow pile there, because then you don't have to buy it or put it, it's the loading and unloading that costs money, whereas if you got a scraper, you can just go ahead and scrape it down and move it. It's much more cost effective.
So we could put a big sign that says free for the hauling.
I was just thinking that. Put it on Craigslist, man, be gone tomorrow.
We've had people before that have.
We've been turning them away thinking, well, we need to use it. And now we're going to have to pay to move it.
Okay. So,
Okay? All right, so, Gail, let's go to the second to last slide. And then we'll go back to the numbers just real quickly. That was it.
This one,
Next one, sorry. Other way.
the
There you go.
numbers? Oh, okay.
All right, so one of the questions was, what can we do next summer? And so I looked at, was trying to hit, the last information we had from Patrick Gaffney was we had about $800,000 in your save account. That's the 1 cent sales tax, money, cash on hand. So knowing that the safe entries at the two schools were important, these are easy to get done over the summer. Addressing the ventilation system only, this is not doing the gym work. And then doing the 5th grade classroom innovation, all these could be done easily over the summer. And just thinking about what you communicate to the general public is, well, are you being presumptive that we're going to go ahead and pass a bond issue? Well, in this case, if it doesn't pass, you still have adequate money on hand to pay for those projects. And so people know that these are really important to get implemented, and you're just using that money instead of just leaving it in the savings account. So it's just one option to look at. We can certainly pick and choose other projects. I was just trying to pick off ones that were easy to get done, and if this is something of interest, even in the next few months ahead, you could authorize us proceeding to start designing and doing that work so it can go ahead and be bid and be done over the summertime, if you wanted to. It's just more or less a data point, information point. That makes sense? Okay, next slide. Let's go. So then the question is, and this became harder, because I was basically trying to make a decision on your behalf on what gets put off, because one of the questions was, could we go ahead and just stagger some of these projects? But a lot of these really have immediate needs. So just these projects could start being worked on in 2019. But a lot of these, like the gym heating, veiling, air conditioning, temperature control, MEP, a lot of this stuff is all kind of intertwined as well too. It makes sense to kind of group that together. Same with this one as well too. They're all, there's similar contractors working on it, and you want to have that all tied together. Knowing that the middle school and the high school are going to need their classrooms, those need to be brought into the picture as well too. The question is do you go ahead and do these two projects right away or not? I went ahead and put them in for package them with 2019, and also athletics and repair in the baseball stadium and the baseball softball field. So it's just a first pass at what might be done 2019. And the next slide, we just show that you could postpone to the next year. And I've already heard this would go up. This is going to get moved up anyway. I've heard that from the board already. That you do the fine arts edition concurrent with the other projects, or do you go ahead and just postpone and do it a year or two later? The point is they certainly have the need. They're outgrowing the space. So it's very hard to kind of say, well, we should just go ahead and push this off. We know that the classrooms are going to be important because the enrollment is there, the need is there. Okay. I don't know.
Can you go slide down to 2019?
Sure.
So this is just our primaries. No, we're not, like with the middle school, you're just looking at adding the classrooms at the south end and enlarging the locker rooms, but then that displaces.
I'm sorry,
that includes the.
That does include the multi-purpose rooms.
I'm sorry, I abbreviated that. It's
okay,
just
that's fine.
Enlarge locker rooms and.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I just.
Nope, it should.
Yeah.
Good catch.
That's when I asked. A third of it would be locker rooms.
Right.
And that is reflecting 3 classrooms at the high school then?
This one is using 3 classrooms. It'd be 3.44 million if you want to go 6 to 8 classrooms.
So when we met a few weeks back, when Tyler and I met with you and the administrative team, one of my questions was, well, let me back up and say I appreciate this. It's very clear. It's I think that we have one direction. One of my questions for you was, I view this particular set of slides right here as being our being fair to all 5 categories. We're taking our top priorities. So one of the things that I asked for you to do when you met with the administrative team on the 6th was to take this list of 27 priorities and prioritize those, to go through and give us a list 1 through 27, what's the most important. Really looking at the 4 main priorities that the board had, and as we look at what's right for our kids educationally, 21st century learning, safety, all of those priorities. Were you able to do that, and do these lists reflect?
They do not reflect that. That's a good question, and if you want to take a couple-minute break, I can certainly go through and circle. I mean, I would go back. I'm going to go back to the priorities that we set to start with, and we'll just basically start going through and saying, but I'd be happy to circle these, spend a few minutes, and I can reconvene in a couple minutes. It's going to take a
well, I think it's going to take another meeting anyway, so we're going to be back here in
right.
the 30s. So I'd like to wrap up by 8 o'clock.
No, that's fine. That's
I mean,
that would be very important to me.
Yeah. And I apologize if you did ask that question, and I didn't do it.
Ask the question again, because I may not be understanding right, but at the board meeting on Monday, I asked, did the administrative team feel like it was good discussion, that everybody had their say, and my understanding was this is coming from you, right? With this followed by that, followed by that. So what's your question relative to these lists?
I just feel that perhaps there are some things on the secondary and tertiary list that some folks, either that teach for us or in the public that are patrons, might think are higher priorities. And I just want to be able to talk through them in this work session before we say, this is the direction that we're going, and we have to answer a lot of questions.
Yep.
So, and are you saying then we want to look at this as a list of priorities, take out the buildings, just district wide priorities 1 through 27, meaning it's possible that not every building gets their top or something like that if in fact a secondary priority of another building takes precedence. Am I?
Yeah.
Did I butcher that? But do you know what I mean? I think it's nice because the way that we have looked at it, everybody gets a little bit. We're kind of making everybody happy. But in terms of the overall district, have we done what needs to be done first? In that order?
Well, and quite honestly, I want to be, if we know we're going to need 7 classrooms in the high school in the next 5 to 6 years, I want to be able to explain to someone why we chose 3 classrooms and, quite honestly, a baseball field versus 7 classrooms and building a practice field. I think they're important conversations for us to have before we go forward with the bond process.
Yeah. So from my standpoint, Kim, I don't look at this as saying, okay, now everybody that's in favor say aye, right?
Right.
I'm looking at this, it's now 8 o'clock, but I'm looking at this as, now we have the dialogue, now we have the discussion.
Yeah.
I do want to make sure that I understand where the administrative team comes in on this. But I would agree with you, I don't think that this is necessarily the list.
Right.
But I don't want to, I want to be absolutely clear that the administrative team already had a long conversation about this, in which I would assume you put the district's needs rather than your own needs at the top, right? And so just so we're clear, that is how this list came up. Because it did change, as I understand it, after your October 6th meeting.
But we didn't have that conversation to what you asked, Kim, and that is, what's the most important thing district-wide now? We didn't have that conversation as an administrative team. We did talk about, what's important building by building by building. So I'm just, Frank, I
don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, no.
But I don't think it's reinventing the wheel. Right. I think, like, worst case scenario, if the bond doesn't pass, we have some really hard decisions to be made about the district, where maybe not every building gets their top priority. I mean, I totally get that what they did is fantastic work. If that passes, it's very helpful. But
so Kim, are you trying to get out if there's a disconnect between what the community and patrons want as compared to what we've arrived at, primarily administrative input? Is that what you're getting at with the question? If there's a disconnect? No. Okay.
It's really more along the lines of what Deb is saying, and if it passes and all the money comes in line the way we want and all the timing and everything works, great.
Right.
But if it doesn't, what's our priority list? Really, what do we want to hammer out step by step by step by step? Taking into, account doing like projects at the same time for cost savings and things like that. I just think that we're moving forward, and I think that we as a district, that's a positive thing, but there are going to be a lot of questions, and I want to make sure that we have those discussions now, because we're moving forward at a pretty quick time frame. Even moving it back to April, I just want to talk through.
So in the interest of time, let me just, I think it would be good if we do share, if we would like more information. I think we're going to need to come back together, right? And then the 30th is what we've talked about. But I think it would be good just to say, well, what are the areas that we want to understand more, have some dialogue on, because it's not just going away for 2 weeks and coming back and saying, okay, now it's all figured out, right?
Yep.
So for example, I would agree, I would really like to understand how we can do the larger project at the high school, which is more money, not less money. What does that mean to the list? I don't know, but I think I would like to see us wrestle with that. I'll go out and say I would also like us to look at the middle school locker room project. I would like to see that locker room project and a vestibule, but is there a way that we can create that space in this building for whatever that additional wrestling or multi-purpose would be that could get us by for 5 or even 10 years? We've said we didn't want to mix ages, but now we're talking middle school to intermediate, not what we were talking about 6 years ago or 5 years ago, high school to intermediate. So those would be a couple of things that I would just throw out that came up for me as I was reviewing this. But I think it'd be good for everybody to share if there's something specifically that we want to get more information on or be able to then have more dialogue on.
I had the high school, looking at this, how do I come up with the 1.2 million to put on additional high school classrooms? That was something that I was really thinking getting out 5 years probably isn't enough on high school, and I don't know, I don't have what would be cut as a function of doing that, but that was one that was and more thinking of what would we delay in order that we could do that at the high school level.
Well, maybe it isn't really asking the administrators to go through the list again, but when you look at the district priorities that are laid out, provide adequate educational spaces at all the buildings is number one. So is it really that hard of a decision for us? I mean, is it really that hard?
Well,
maybe it's not about making these guys go back and do 1 through 27, but maybe it's about making some hard decisions, I guess. No, they're easy, but that we don't want to make. Right? To just say, well, that is number one, and I assume that was number one for a reason.
Right, and if
right?
forecast is we're going to have 140 more students in 10 years than we have right now in the high school.
One thing that was discussed is the risk of building all the classrooms and not being able to staff them, and how the perception be in the community if we build all these classrooms and we weren't able to hire teachers to teach in them. So that was part of that conversation about, do we go with the more or the less?
But if we change our viewpoint and each teacher doesn't have, I mean, we've talked about some different things, but if a room isn't dedicated to a teacher, but rather to a discipline or to a class itself, and the teacher, there are just a lot of things that I think we need to talk about. Just because we build it, we don't have to fill it. If we have the opportunity to build it now, and
as long as the community agrees with you.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well,
yeah,
and I think that's absolutely the appropriate way to look at it, Mike, is, well, for any of these, that was kind of my energy question, right? Is it neutral to our budget, general budget, or is it increase? So space eventually will increase those costs. But if we're projecting 140 more students in the high school in the next 10 years, we got to put them somewhere, right? And so those will come with state support. Maybe not enough to have. Maybe not enough to have the.
You weren't in the same meeting with John and I.
Well, they come with state support. It may not be the amount that we want.
But I do think, from a general fund perspective, we probably should get together before the 30th and start putting some numbers around that.
Well, and I think looking at custodial stuff, we are very spread thin the way we are.
What about like FF&E, like furniture, fixtures and equipment? Is that an added cost to this? Those are all figured in. The other thing that we talked about, and we did talk, just what Amy has talked about, is the fact of what is it going to cost us to equip it from the standpoint of physically having someone there, more custodial staff, more utilities. Those are the things that I think can.
More grounds, make
grounds, exactly.
Well, and so I think that's an excellent exercise, right? What's the general budget look like when we've got 1,900 students? And it's everything you just talked about, it's additional administrative.
Plus
right?
20%, I mean, if our existing budget is a pretty good rough estimate.
Yeah.
Statewide, it takes 80% salaries and benefits and 20% on top of that to keep things running, so.
Gail, do you have that forecasting capability to plug in X number of students and current rates?
Yeah.
Heck
For
yeah.
new stuff, just get some just like that. Yeah, we just get the factors. We just come up with the factors, and then we can do that.
Then one other thing that we should, spend a little time talking on is when we talked to Travis, the range for funding was in that $12 to $15 million.
Well,
what are cost overruns in this, John? That was the one thing. Is there 10% contingency?
Yeah, 10% contingency.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. We talked with the team about that, and I think that also assumed that you're going to take $410,000 out of your PEPL and leave $250,000 for PEPL every year. And while the PEPL is being used every year to get on your financial sheet, I believe that the way I read it, you got your GEO bonds, you get 12.1 million. PEPL notes is 5.7 million. And sales tax bonds 2.2. And I think the PEPL levy right now generates $655,000 per year. And I think it said that to do the PEPL notes at 5.7 million, you're going to.
Well, PEPL has to generate more than that because we're spending more than that today.
Well, you can only levy you can't levy the 33-cent board directive.
Right, so there's another 33 cents, so that's probably another 200 and.
Oh, right, yeah, for $1.34.
Yeah, there's another 33-cent levy.
That's
that
not included in this.
Right.
So the question is, how comfortable are you using some of your PEPL funds to retire or to pay for, bonds? So you must be getting another. There a couple $100,000, is that right, in PEPL?
Yeah. You have it.
Here it is, scenario 1, page 2, scenario 1. You could do 2018, 2019, debt service at 405 would get you 12.1 million. And I'm borrowing $3.5 million against voter-approved PEPL levy, using $410,000 a year of PEPL cash, which would get you 15.6 million. So out of that 655 that you have annually, you're going to use 410. So it'll leave you 245. Is that correct? The way I read it again?
I think we got to go back and
we have some projections on that too.
Yeah. So let's, unless you want to enter into a
we can visit with those numbers too. So.
Well, I think I pointed out in our meeting with you on the 6th, because I know the things that happened in my focus group, a whole slide of things that weren't going to be included in the bond process that would be paid out of PEPL, and I know that happened in several other buildings too, so I think we just need to be careful about allocating that money to go towards this bond when we know we have other things that need attention that can be paid for out of PEPL.
I think we also have to be careful because there's things that have come up, and like it was a year ago or 2 years ago we went with cameras. That wasn't even really on our radar. And again, I know you have to be very cautious of things as you go through, but there's general maintenance that we're going to have, and more buildings means more maintenance.
Lindsay, when do you meet as a team again?
You guys have it on the calendar.
26th.
Would that be tight for the 30th?
Pardon me? That's too tight for the 30th,
Too tight
yeah.
for the 30th.
You don't have one?
We can adjust.
You have one that following?
We'll try to go ahead and set one up, John, earlier than that, and see if it works for you.
Well, my thought was, I don't want to do this in a vacuum. I'd like to go through and put this, reprioritize it.
Okay.
And come back and have, everyone look at it together so that we can come together when the board in 30th, that we're all in agreement. We're not trying to get into some kind of a tug of war, essentially. So I'd be happy to come on a Friday morning again, if we could do it not this Friday.
We don't have a meeting scheduled for this week, but.
That would be this Friday, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And do we need to prioritize all 27 items or more of the highest and like maybe because we had a lot of conversations about like, well, why is this a secondary in your building and a primary in our building? And so then that was where a lot of our tweaks came from is if it's a high priority in your building, well, it's going to be a high priority in my building too. So I think, are there certain projects that we could like take off the table in that case that might be helpful?
That's what I'm proposing to do is basically say is, okay, so what's the highest priority is going to be, it's going to be the high school classrooms and the middle school classrooms. We know that enrollment is coming. We got to get this taken care of. Now we got to start working our way down there.
It's going to turn into a shuffling sort of thing, and it makes more sense for you guys to shuffle if we've just said right now it's a priority to most of us for that high school classrooms, right? So what are we shuffling? And I mean, we could sit here and just move the titles ourselves, but that's not very productive.
What if they're saying it's not a priority for the staff?
Right. I mean, they've already done the exercise, Kim. Now we're saying we think 7 classrooms makes more sense, so just take another look at it. I don't think you have to start over.
No, I don't
not from scratch.
But don't we already have about $2 million wiggle room between these priorities and the 2018 and 2019? Isn't there about $2 million?
It just depends on how much the total is, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where I'd like the finance to come back and say, okay, because I would agree, I just want to state for the administrative team, we're not up here to compromise the Pebble. So that's Travis coming in and suggesting that you can bond against it. I don't think it's wise. So let's just take that anxiety out of the room. but then what does that mean for what number we got?
Right. Electric tables.
Right. Down to 12, right?
Well, and then
down to about 12. About 12.
Yeah.
And then I'd like to understand more of where we're at, but we save money too, right?
Yep.
So you want to talk about taking the flag down to Des Moines, it's, well, extend the save, right?
That's huge.
So
I did anticipate we have some kind of conversation. I didn't have them reorganized, but the point is I said, how can we get $12 million? I went ahead and just said, okay, take out the stadium, but just do the practice fields, up there. And you're not doing any lighting, you're not doing any concession stand down here. Now I had the 3 classrooms, not the 7 classrooms.
right.
What'd you write about there?
I postponed, the other thing I did is I postponed the fire alarm upgrades at the elementary school. And this is just highest priorities. I got down to 12.235 million. Now we got to add $1.2 million for the high school. So I think we can probably get still a lot of projects done. It's still, I want to hit the 12 million mark, I think, because that's what you can do geo bond, and then you can decide if you want to use anything else.
Yeah.
And you do have, I think, 800,000 in the from the save income. That's just in a cash on hand. So it could be 12.8 million or 12.9 million if you want to use all that cash and not even touch Pebble.
And it's all great if the bond passes.
Exactly.
It's all great.
So John, you want to set up a time that we can meet with you? You guys got your calendars here?
Will it work this Friday or not?
Yeah, I think it'll work.
What time?
On the 30th?
Yep.
Other than we're meeting on the 30th.
Yeah.
Amy, you're pretty quiet. Does it work for you?
So we're not asking.
7, you wanted to go the early morning one or not? Does that work out?
Be better.
John, does that work for you?
I turn my phone off.
Oh, you might have trouble getting this on there.
We can adjourn.
Yeah, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Say what?
Adjourn,
Oh, second.
unless you want to stay around.
Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Sounds
Okay,
good.
adjourned. Thanks, everyone. It was a really good meeting. Thanks, John. That was a great presentation.
Yeah, very good.
And thanks, team, for your efforts in getting into that with John and Sam.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
Do you,
thank you.
does the board want hard copies also of this report? Would that be helpful? Or we sent just a PDF, we didn't print anything yet, but it's up to you. Or you want to just wait until we're all done, or it's up to you.
Oh, I'm happy with electronic.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Amy,
You just close it.
pull
Let's
the
find out what
cord out.
happens, yeah. Find out. Let's do
I
it.
can